All right, a very good morning to you. It's good to see you on this Tuesday morning. I wanted to say Monday morning, but hashtag Mandavano. So I hope that you're doing very well. This morning, welcome to the show. This is Your World. I hope that you are okay and, of course, ready to tackle the week. I know there's a lot happening in the country, but again, there's so much that we also need to focus on. An equally important conversation that we all should have, and this is as far as sustainable waste management is concerned, because at the end of the day we have one planet that we need to take care of, and this is this involves all of us, because again, when we say when you talk about waste and all those things, actually statistics indicate that more than 2 billion tons, 2 billion, all right, of waste is gathered or generated yearly, and of course this is expected to increase to 3.4 billion tons, and this is by 2050. But a third of the world's waste is being openly dumped. So how much of an impact is this, not only to the environment, but again to the planet, and what can we do in terms of our individual roles to make sure that we change the situation? Well, that is what we want to talk about today, but we'll have a special focus, and this is as far as the coastal region is concerned. So why exactly the coastal region? Well, again, you want to stick around and find out more on the same. And of course, my panel today, it's the best panel to have this conversation, because we have experts from various entities. We have one from the government, of course we have community leaders, and all aspects covered. So like I said, you want to stick around to also understand what role you can play as an individual to make sure that we achieve this, and this is as far as sustainable waste management is concerned. So my guests are already here. I can see Dr. Ayub Macharia has just come in, so we'll allow him some time to settle before we talk to him. And of course, Dr. Ayub Macharia is the Director, Environment Awareness, Ministry of Environment, Forestry and Climate Change. He is here in the studio, so we're just going to give him a second to get mic'd and all those things. And then we'll also have Sonia Orwa, who's country CEO, Mr. Green Africa. It's so good to have you this morning. Karibu sana. You look lovely.
Thank you.
Like I want it. And of course, we also have Richard Kainika, who's the Secretary General, Kenya Association of Waste Recyclers. So good to have you as well. Karibu sana to the show. And last but not least, we have James Odongo, who's the Chief Administrative Officer, Kenya Extended Producer Responsibility Organization, joining us via Zoom. Hey, titles, this morning. But it's so good to see you, James. If you can hear me, how are you doing this morning?
I'm fine, thank you. I'm actually in Mombasa.
Okay, all right, okay. Thank you so much for sparing your time to join, us all the way from Mombasa. And I'm just going to begin with you now that you are in Mombasa. Again, like I said, today's conversation would, we have this problem, in the entire country, but the coastal region is where there's a very special emphasis. So the big question is why? Why the coastal region? What exactly is happening down there?
Okay, of course. Now, maybe just to put it into context, you've used quite a mouthful, or rather, you said our introduction is quite a mouthful. But the Kenya Extended Producer Responsibility Organization is a business member organization that is bringing together waste value chain stakeholders, and more specifically non-hazardous waste, to be able to address post-consumer waste in Kenya. And so within our mandate, we are very keen on collaborations and getting to partner with the various stakeholders within the environment to be able to first not only create awareness, but actually take action to address the issue of waste. And so within that framework, we were able to partner with the Kenya Association of Waste Recyclers and other partners. There's Richard there, and there's Sharon, who will be having the week-long campaign on just sensitizing members of the public on why waste is first of value, and why we also need to sustainably manage our waste. And so you've asked why specifically the coast region. First, we have the Indian Ocean, which is a critical resource in terms of first tourism, and even from an environmental point of view. And over the years, we've experienced a worrying trend within which the unsustainably managed waste is finding its way onto the shores of our beaches and the larger Indian Ocean. And that in itself really gave us precedence as to the areas to start with, as fast sensitization of, or rather creating awareness on why we need to sustainably manage our waste and what the impact would be on on the coastal environment.
I see that, and of course it's very key then for people to understand what the roles they play actually to, first of all, where we are now and how we can, you know, sort of like change the situation. And of course, like I said, Dr. Ayub Macharia, Director, Environment Awareness, Ministry of Environment, Forestry and Climate Change, is here with us. Asante sana, you know, for making time for us this morning. And I'm just going to throw it to you. You know, when we talk about waste management, I think all of us have our own different definitions, you know, as far as, first of all, what is considered waste, and you know, what is good and what is not, because we have seen some people who use waste, you know, to generate, you know, a lot of things, from manure to, you know, some form of like electricity or biogas and all those things. But there's also one that is considered not good for the environment. So let's just start from there. Waste that is not good for the environment. What exactly are we talking about, and what role do we play, all of us, maybe day-to-day activities, you know, that we do that contribute to where we are today?
Okay, thank you. Thank you, and good morning, viewers. When we talk about waste, we talk about the materials that have reached their end of use.
Okay.
And so if you buy something, you use it, then when you no longer need it, then it can be regarded as waste. However, we still have a new definition of waste, where although something has reached its end of use, it doesn't mean that it has lost its value.
Okay.
It still had resources. There are resources inside that product or material that has reached its end of use, and this resource needs to be harnessed again, so that it can be put back into the loop. And that is the new concept of waste management that we are talking about. You have asked me about our law. We play different roles depending on where we are at the value chain. We are at the beginning of the value chain. We are the users of these products.
All right.
And so we are waste generators.
Okay.
Then the new act that was passed last year also challenges all of us to also play another role.
All right.
The role of paying for pollution. So we must pay for processing of the waste that we generate.
Right.
That is another role that has been made clear in the new law. And so we have those two critical roles. We are waste generators, and we are also responsible to make sure that our waste is well managed, and we should pay for that.
Okay. Yeah. And that is where Sonia and of course Richard come in to make sure that, again, like you said, in as much as something you know, has come to an end in terms of like its use and all those things, it doesn't have to be the case. But majority of the times, waste management is different when we talk about, you know, the business aspect of the same, and also like the general aspect of the same, where take care of the environment, make sure that you know how you dispose it or how you use it, and generation, you know, like Dr. Ayub mentioned. So when we talk about sustainability in terms of, you know, the business aspect of the same, and just generally, you know, talking about sustainability, what exactly does that look like?
Well, for me, I think, and for Mr. Green Africa, which is a plastic recycler, one of the largest in East Africa, we look at it obviously as a group coming together as stakeholders. Okay. Because from the consumer, as is mentioned, we're talking about there's a plastic producer who makes the resin, for example. There's FMCG company that also needs the packaging, right? Sure. Then you have the waste collectors, then you have the recyclers, and the whole entire value chain starts and ends with the consumer. Sure. So for the sustainability of waste management, it has to be an educated consumer. 100%, the awareness of the consumer, knowing that they could influence how plastic is produced, making sure that it's produced in a fashion that it can be given new life and not just end up in a landfill, for example, right? So in that circularity, the consumer can influence, for example, how the packaging is created, but in the end, they also influence in terms of the segregation and making sure they can get value from their waste. And how Mr. Green plays into all of this is really making sure that perception of waste and making sure people understand the value that plastic waste, for example, has, is really felt and known, that it is something that you can feel in your pocket. Sure. I think if you want to change culturally people's minds, you have to give them the value, right? You have to tell them, in the end, in this climate, in this economic climate, if it can add a few shillings, then, for example, people will start being interested in waste management. And sustainability is really pegged on the awareness and the actions of the consumer, I would say.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's interesting that you say the consumer sort of like influences, for example, what plastic, how it is produced, which is very interesting to to think about it. I'll come back to you to help us understand then more on the same. But still on the whole question about sustainability from a business angle, what exactly does that look like, Richard?
Thank you very much, and good morning, viewers. From the perspective of recycling, the business aspect of what recycling consists is that maybe I should just begin by saying that waste is actually not waste.
Okay.
Waste, when it is properly handled, it becomes a resource.
Okay, so should we change the name?
Yeah.
From waste into...
If we align with the Act, as Dr. Mashari said, that is exactly where we are going. I mean, through the circular economy concept. That when every person becomes a recycler, directly or indirectly, we begin now to create resource. We create jobs. And in fact, even the generator of that waste, somehow, through the level of awareness that they get, they also begin to make some profit from the same. The business concept of circular economy and recycling could even begin in the homes, in our homestead setup or in the office, whereby the generator may refuse to give out the waste to those service providers who are not properly applying the right operation standards. This is because what the Act is stipulating, that we separate our waste into fractions, the wet waste or the organics, and also the dry waste, which most times you find the bigger percentage of it is recyclable. So such waste, if one had a place to keep that waste, then they could easily convert it to a resource. Because recycling, from where we stand, is where we collect that waste, process it, and it is converted to a finished product that comes back to the market. One thing that probably most people don't know is that a significant fraction of the materials that we are using, all the items that we purchase from the market, also are derived from recycling. So it's a very encouraging process. It is, for us, when we see waste being thrown away or when it is mixed up and it loses value, it is really, to us, it looks like loss. What we stand for as recyclers is that when we separate the waste, we are able to enhance our economic growth. We are able also to contribute to the GDP. Actually, like in 2019, a short survey revealed that recycling in Kenya contributed like 0.45% of the GDP. So, and of course now Kenya, you know, we have quite a challenge in terms of jobs, unemployment, and we have so many people who are not employed, especially the youth, and there is so much waste that is littering. If you go around and you find a lot of waste littering our environment. So basically, like for what we are doing in Mombasa and what we plan to do for the entire country is to make people aware, to sensitize them on the value that is in that waste. All right.
What we call, I think from now, let's just say quote unquote waste, because like you said, waste should not be waste at all, depending on how we look at things. All right. And James, let me bring you in now, where awareness is important. All of us need to understand, you know, waste and how, you know, we can dispose them, because I think majority of the issues come from, you know, disposable of this waste. And awareness is important, but majority of the times we see this, even in our own homes, we don't separate and say, you know, these are glass bottles, we need to, you know, dispose them in this way, or these are plastic, you know, whatever it is that we have, dispose them in this way, and this is like, you know, organic, what Richard is talking about. We dump everything together, and then the people who come to collect the garbage, you know, we see them now trying to separate and all those things. So then where does this, you know, how detrimental is this? Because we don't see this from our own homes. We see it, you know, outside when, for example, here in Nairobi, you know, the Dandora, you know, dump site is where we see people trying to separate all those things. So how much of a detriment is that?
Okay. So maybe we need just put it into context.
All right.
The average PET bottle that you use for the mineral water that you purchase from your supermarket or are served at a hotel, if disposed onto the environment, would ordinarily stay in the environment for around up to 500 years. That is what research has shown us. So that in itself should tell you how consequential this is. And even from a legislative point of view, Article 42 of our Kenyan Constitution guarantees us the right to a clean and healthy environment. But then how are we able to realize that if we ourselves are not able to take charge of our waste and be able to really prevent it from getting into the environment? And then now, when you talk about the whole aspect of awareness, could we possibly also be culturally tied down to practices that we've sort of learned over the years, and understandably working with Richard and the other stakeholders? What we are realizing is that even as you create awareness, the question that comes in is there an incentive for me?
Okay.
So you sort of urge someone to maybe collect and segregate their wastes in particular fractions in a particular manner, and then submit it to us for onward processing to our recyclers and waste managers. But then the idea is quite a number of the communities we are working with and individual persons we are working with, we've had scenarios where somebody asks you, is there an incentive for me to be able to bring this waste to you? And then maybe, I'm sure Dr. Macharia will be highlighting it, legally now, and the Sustainable Waste Management Act and the resulting regulations will require that you're able to segregate your waste at source. So I think besides the whole aspect of mindset shift and cultural shift, the law is also coming into place and will sort of force us and sort of policy us at even household level to ensure that we are segregating our source whenever we are disposing our waste.
And initially, again, I think Dr. Macharia, I want to loop you in, again, still on the same, and this is as far as law is concerned. Remember when there was a plastic ban, there was a lot of hesitancy, push and pull, amongst the producers to, the consumers as well. They're like, so what do you want us to use and all those? There's a lot of push and pull, but eventually, the ban came to effect and we all saw a difference. So the question is, does it have to always be like that, make sure that we have a law in place so that people follow, all those things, or just follow good practices, really, but you also still focus on, again, like the law and how then are you able to track, for example, me in my house, how is the law able to say, no, Winnie, you did not separate, your waste at household level?
Thank you. I think where you have said about behavior. I think if you compare ourselves with Europe, for example, them they segregate their waste even when there is no law.
That's true.
So countries such as Denmark, they have they separate. You go to a compound, there are over 10 bins, and guys come with their waste and place it appropriately. Yeah, and it is not said so in law. There's no law, there's no, they have just decided that that is the way they want to live. But here in Kenya, in the past, that is before last year, before 2022, the law that we had really talked about segregation. We needed to segregate our waste at source. And some people did it, but they got discouraged when the truck came. And everything was mixed together. And when we have mixed waste, it is contaminated. And when it goes to the sorters, even to the dump site, it cannot be, you cannot recover it. Because it is contaminated.
And everything mixed together, glass is broken. There's a lot of things.
So that is why last year, the ministry came up with a law, the Sustainable Management Act 2022, which stipulates that it is the responsibility of the waste generator to segregate the waste at source. But of course here in Kenya, knowing who we are, we decided that in our small houses, we decided that the bins will be two. One for organic and the other one for all the synthetics. You put them all together, but they are dry. All the dry synthetics in one bin and then the organic on one side. However, the same act says that the movement of that waste from the household to the material recovery facility, not to the dump site, note, not the dump site.
Not the dump site,
to the material recovery facility, because we want to recover materials, should be done by the waste service providers who are licensed, and they should not mix that waste.
Okay.
So there should be a day for organic and a day for
the
synthetics. So the synthetic and the non-synthetic should not share the same truck, the same day, same time. So you can have the same truck but different dates. And this is supposed to make sure that when it goes to the material recovery facility, the waste is quite clean. It is recoverable. It can easily be sorted.
Yeah.
So that we can recover as much material as possible. So the emphasis of our law is recovery. We want to recover as much as possible.
Yeah.
Because science shows that our waste is 60% organic, 30% recyclable, and 10% others.
Okay.
So only 10% of our waste actually should go to the landfill. Even less than that, because still from the 10% you can recover to get energy, waste to energy.
Yeah.
So so that is what the law says, and it creates offenses, so that if you don't segregate waste at your house, and it is clear you don't segregate, then number one, your waste will be left by the waste service provider, and you cannot carry it yourself.
Okay.
The waste service provider, well, also you can be fined 20,000 shillings. But the waste service provider, if that truck is stopped by an inspector from the county government or NEMA or the police, and it is found to be carrying mixed waste, then they will be fined 50,000 shillings. Okay. Of course, so those fines were not there before, but they are more towards discouraging those bad practices.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So, and I'm tempted to ask, do we have any arrests that have been made? Because we see this even in our estates and all those things where everything is just mixed together, despite the fact that we have the law. So I'm really curious to understand, Sonia and Richard, the practicality of this law, because so far we've not seen anyone following up and to understand. So how do you segregate your waste? Do you even segregate your waste in the first place? And how much of a task then this is? And especially for for Richard.
Yeah, good question. I think I want to begin from an optimistic angle. That Kenyans are compliant people. We are a compliant society, and I like the fact that Doctor is here, and the whole government has really been very supportive. And I'm saying supportive, especially to our sector, because recycling is actually a sector. And I'm saying this because we've been losing a lot of money through the mixing of waste. But whose responsibility is it, as you say? I want to look at myself when I'm in the kitchen. You see, I'm doing something with the daily packaging that we always do in the morning, because Kenyans, we like to take tea. So there is a lot of need for awareness and responsibility. How should I deal with that packaging once I put the milk in the sufuria? From the Association of Waste Recyclers guidelines, we propose that once you are done with the packaging, you should rinse it. Right? All right. So let's say, for instance, this is what had your daily product. You're done with pouring it in the whatever. Then you rinse it and put it in the bin, as Dr. Macharia has indicated. By rinsing, you've begun a process that we call value addition. Because when it comes to us with the residue, one, we count it as weight. At some point, I mean, when you are looking at 100 kilograms, it will still count. There is a percentage of that count. And secondly, you have maintained the purity of that material. That is that you have also been economical with the value of your money. Because the rinsing did not contaminate your milk or your tea, you see. When you are doing something like yogurt, you also rinse and put it there. But back to the homestead, once you've done that, there is always this issue of dumping just after that corner from your house. You find like 200 meters, the farthest, that is where the guys are taking your waste. We think that is a big problem, but it isn't. It's actually our own problem. Because sometimes you find in your homestead, you contract somebody who is not properly compliant. We never get to the point of asking, this group or this lady or this gentleman, do you even have a license? Okay. Or what is your name?
Yeah.
Or how do you yes. You see? So there are some basic guidelines that are provided by the government through NEMA and the county government that you as a waste generator, the household, the person who is in charge of that household or the office, you're supposed to familiarize yourself with this, that this person is supposed to be basically for the young people, the youth, the CBOs. They are supposed to be registered with the county government, wherever you are. Yeah. Number two, you are also supposed to follow up on, so what do you do once you collect this waste? Okay. Because basically we try to encourage them as the Recycling Association of Kenya. You see, they should have a sorting facility. I'm talking of now, before we get to the implementation of the Act, which is already now upon us. But basically what we encourage people to do is that you separate, even in your home. Most people don't have 2 bins. They only have 1 bin. True. So there is a lot of need, and that is why we are here, so that people may hear. Because even the Bible says that how will they know unless they are told? So every homestead, every place where we generate waste, you should have 2 receptacles. One should be for those things that are watery and organic, and others for the dry. Most times, like Dr. Macharia said, most times the dry has value. If you are able, like for those people who have gardens and places where they can put their dry waste, you always make some money. And it is good money. For instance, plastics will go all the way to like 30 shillings. You know, paper is like 20 or 18 shillings. So if you pile that for a year, if you have space, it will still make some sense when you call that person. And you always find that in your neighborhood there is an aggregator, somebody who collects waste, mixed waste, so they segregate. So basically what we ask people to do is, the person that you contract to do your garbage services, get to know what they do. They could be the same people who are littering your backyard. That's true. And that backyard is where you get mugged, you know. It's the place where you walk your child, and it is so bad that you turn your way and you don't want to go through that place. It's the same place where you get visitors, and you feel disappointed because of your environment. So
I mean, I see that. But majority of people would say, you know, for us, tutavuliza landlord, kwa nini takataka haijachukuliwa and all those things. We don't really take it upon ourselves, you know, as individuals, because again, like you said, in your own home and compound, I mean, it's easier for you to understand. So who's coming to collect my garbage and all those things. But then again, what happens with this bigger, you know, population of people? I have not forgotten the whole aspect about consumer and how they inform, you know, how all these things is produced. But we need to take a break. But of course, I promise when we come back, I'll give you the first chance, Sonia, to contribute to the same. And of course, the whole question of fine. So we understand some of these challenges. What are some of the ways, you know, or things that have been put in place just to make sure that we deal with this challenge, so that we don't, you know, come 2030 or 2050, you know, we have a totally different, you know, conversation altogether as far as waste is concerned. All that is coming up after the break. But again, if you have any question or comment at NTV Kenya, both on Facebook and on Twitter is how you can reach us. But again, give us a call. The numbers will be down on your screen in just a sec, so that we all understand how we can, you know, be responsible, especially when it comes to waste management. Stay with us. All right, welcome back. The show is Your World. Time really flies. I don't know what's happening, but today is all about a very important conversation, like I said, that we all should be talking about and thinking about, but most importantly, taking action. And this is as far as sustainable waste management is concerned, because the majority of the times when we hear these terms, we're like, see, NEMA, watashughulikia, the Ministry of Environment will take care of that. Us will just blame the landlord for not having a waste, you know, being taken in time. But again, like we're saying, this is our collective responsibility and begins with us as individuals, begins from our homes all the way, you know, to the entities responsible. And Sonia, I had promised you, when we come back from the break, I'll give you that chance to talk about how consumers then can influence how everything is produced, but also, you know, talk a little bit about then handling of this waste, because Richard says, if we segregate it from our homes, like from, you know, us as people, makes it easier for Richard and his group, and for you as well. So you'll comment on that, but you know, how the consumers,
maybe just to also add something to what Dr. Macharia had mentioned. I think with the stick that the law gives of the fines, there's also the carrot that I think we were discussing during the break, is that if people know that they can get value from the plastic, from the paper, from the cardboard, then they will automatically start to think that way and naturally start to segregate, right? But on the point of now, when it comes to from the recycler's perspective, obviously it would be easier from the waste pickers, who are very core to Mr. Green and how we work, and the social impact, that if it is segregated, you are giving them, of course, a safer environment to work in, right? In terms of picking the plastic that is not contaminated with items that could affect their health, for example, but more so you're also giving them a more predictable income, right? And so something that I'd always talk about is that waste pickers are our environmental heroes. We tend to see them on the street and we think that, oh, we use certain words that Mr. Green cannot use. But what we look at as Mr. Green is that without that waste picker, this environment cannot be clean, okay? And I think in the new waste management bill, we are trying to create a fair and also a safe and more formalized way for waste pickers to interact. And when they interact with the waste that's already segregated, it's safer. They have a more predictable income. As he mentioned, they will also be paid for the value they bring in, obviously. And that, from a recycler's perspective, and also from Mr. Green's perspective, is just fantastic. It moves us forward in terms of even the cleanliness of the material that comes in is easier to recycle,
that's
for example.
And it's highly valuable.
And highly valuable, right? And that value can be translated all the way from the recycler, but all the way back down to the waste picker, which is very important, that they are paid that 30 kgs for the material they've picked, and it's easier for them to pick. They don't have to get cut by glass in the landfill. They don't have to get, infectious diseases because they are interacting with human waste at the same time they're interacting with plastic. So this waste segregation is fantastic for everyone across that value chain, all the way to the people who will make packaging in the end, because then they get quality products as well.
Absolutely.
Right? And I think that's very key.
Yeah, and we were talking about the whole question about incentives and how you can, instead of paying the people responsible, of course you chuck some amounts to make sure that garbage is collected and all those things, and you can also earn something right, in return, which is a good thing. Okay, so that at the end of the day. And again, like you said, it doesn't have to be what is in it for me for you to be responsible. You can still just be responsible and make everybody's work easier, but most importantly, have a cleaner and safer environment for all of us. So James, talking about all these challenges, that again we have addressed here, what has been the biggest issue, that you have noticed, and especially since we're talking about the fact that we are really focusing on the coastal, region in this conversation today, what has been the biggest challenge?
Of course, my response would be twofold.
Okay.
So one would be consumer facing. One of the critical challenges is the lack of access to waste collection point and waste collection services. So take an instance of Mombasa County, where we are in today. There's the aspect of us having waste generated to the tunes of around 2,200 tons per day. With only 65% of the waste collected. And worryingly, 13% of Mombasa residents are able to access waste collection services. And so that should tell you that even if members of the public had the incentive or really had the motivation to be able to segregate and sustainably handle their waste, then even after I've segregated it, then where do I take it if I don't have access to proper waste management systems, proper waste collection structures? And then secondly is a bit on the design of the packaging materials that we use. And we thank the government and other stakeholders who saw it needful to nip the bud right from the onset of production processes. So increasingly, we are seeing that the government has encouraged manufacturers and of course, embedding it in law that you're supposed to design your packaging sustainably and adding a cost element to it. The Sustainable Waste Management Act and I think Section 13 provides for the environmental producer responsibility schemes. So each manufacturer is supposed to take charge of their packaging material up to the end of life of the product. So that means you have to pay to put your packaging material into the product and, of course, ensure that it's sustainably handled. And then, of course, there's also a bit of availability of space to handle some of this waste. So, for instance, we've recently been working in Kisii County, and due to a lack of space, and now they don't necessarily have a proper landfill to be able to dispose their waste. So then we are seeing a challenge in the county where now they're having a challenge as to how they're able to manage their waste. Understandably, waste management responsibilities are a devolved function. And of course, the law provides that counties are supposed to install material recovery facilities as a handle their waste. But unfortunately, this will take time before they're installed and are actually operational. So for now, we are seeing a challenge as to landfills sort of emanating and piling up on different and unauthorized spaces across the county. So those would be my three top of the head challenges that I feel we will be working towards addressing even as we move forward.
Okay. And of course, I'm just going to ask you then, in your capacity, you know, so what are some of the practical solutions that will work now? Because again, like you said, some will actually take some bit of time and adjustments. Because again, like you said, culture, we were never taught when we were growing up that you segregate your waste. So some things might take time, but what will work now?
Yes, of course, for KEPRO, our immediate priority is awareness creation. We realize that a critical entry point for sustainable waste management would be awareness creation. And we're not just doing that to members of the public, we are going down to the schools and churches, as well as working with community-based organizations, as well as neighborhood associations, to really sensitize them on the need to sustainably manage their waste. And even if from an awareness point of view, for instance, Winnie, if I told you need to segregate your waste, you will then ask me how. So we are really trying to be practical and go down to the ground, working with our recyclers and other stakeholders to be able to sensitize members of the public, giving them practical solutions and demonstrating to them practically on how they need to segregate their waste. In terms of the other practical solutions we are working with, and of course, even as we wait for the EPR regulations to come into force, KEPRO, working with our contracted recyclers, we are having around 11 contracted recyclers distributed across the country. Between 2021 to December 2022, we managed to recycle around 7,500 tons of waste that is flexible plastic. And through that, we are also able to create formal jobs, formalize the roles of waste aggregators, waste collectors who have ordinarily worked informally. So to that effect, we've paid up to around 70 million in terms of subsidies to our recyclers, which trickles down eventually to the waste collectors and waste aggregators. And then another practical solution is taking our manufacturers and our members through appropriate design and technical input on how to design the packaging to ensure that we are able to not only sustainably handle and dispose it, but also give opportunity for reuse and reduction of such packaging materials, working on the principles of the 3 Rs. And through that, we've seen increasingly a mindset shift even from our manufacturers and producers on ensuring that their packaging materials are conforming to really the required sustainability standards. And of course, working with NEMA and working with the Ministry of the Environment, we are also helping our members comply with the regulatory provisions as far as appropriate handling and disposal of their waste is concerned.
All right. Thank you very much, Odongo. Now, again, Dr. Ayub, so yes, we have, you know, we have the ban, right, in place. We have the laws in place, but there's also an interesting approach that you were talking about when we were on break, and this is as far as counties are concerned, because again, like we said, this is a devolved function, and of course, we do not want to add like an extra cost, because the counties will be like, so where's the money? Where do we get it from? So what is this approach that, you know, seems to be taking effect in different parts of the counties?
The approach that we have prescribed in the law is one, to think about the financing of the process. And when the law was being developed, we thought about a self-financing process, so that we don't put extra burden to counties. And so the role of counties is minimized. And what we are doing now is, number one, we want to have a uniform law on waste management in the country. We have the national law, but counties are supposed to also legislate their waste laws, so that they can be able to look at like the charges, because they are the owners of facilities. Actually, the law says that waste should be managed within the boundaries of the county. So waste is owned by the county. And so even movement of waste between counties is not encouraged unless there is an agreement between the counties. That is how serious the law is. And to start to begin the process of implementing the law, we have advised that the county should establish the first material recovery facility at the existing dump sites. So that dump site is reorganized, so that we have one site reserved for the organics. That is bin number 1. And the other one reserved for the synthetics, bin number 2. And the trucks should not bring in waste when it is mixed. So the truck should go to its appropriate direction. And then from these two areas, there will be residual waste. And that is residual waste is the one that will go to a third portion of the dump site. That is the landfill. So we expect landfills to be developed at the dump site level. So now when it comes to enforcement, we would like to see the waste service providers, when they carry the waste from the house, they carry it when it is segregated and they take it to the particular point. And if they meet enforcement officers on the road, then they will be prosecuted if they are found carrying waste that is mixed. And that is where we want to start, so that this waste service provider can now go back to their customers and tell them that I will not carry your waste if you mix it. And that way we feel that the law will start from the dump site and then go up to the household level. So that even they say who is not paying for waste service provision and who is not segregating, so that some further enforcement action can be taken. The other thing that we have done for counties is what my brother has said about these synthetics. They are some of the molecules and polymers. We do not understand them. The guys import anything into this country, and we don't want to block anything from coming to Kenya. But we would like somebody whoever brings a packaging material or a product to this country, you come as a package, your product, and you come with a recycler. So that you don't bring problems to the country. We don't want you to devolve the problem to the county, because they have never experienced that kind of a product. And that is what we are doing with the extended producer responsibility regulations. That way we will ensure that in this country there will be few bans. Actually, the future in this country is there may be no more bans. Yes, because everybody has been given an opportunity to demonstrate that you can manage your product. So if you are not able, actually you will even advise yourself that I would rather not bring this product to Kenya, because it needs to be, I need to go with my recycle.
I mean, you think we might not have to have bans, but again, maybe in some instances where again people are not complying, maybe we can get to that point where we completely ban this thing. But again, like you said, maybe it will get to a point where someone will be like, no, what's our Kenya is a no-go zone for dumping all those things, because we are known for, you know, just having anything and everything come into the country, and it's not necessarily good for the people. But there's also something that Mr. Odongo, I think, mentioned, and that is when it comes to space. You know, sometimes there's not enough space, so it's like, so then where do we take, you know, all those things? Any
actually the law provides for the more participation of the private sector, so that we don't take all our waste to the dump site. Even if we are talking about reorganization of the dump site, if all the waste goes there, you see, we need space for those guys. So we may not have enough space to accommodate all the waste plus the guys during the sorting process. We know that the waste is being processed so that it can get out, it can be recovered. So what we are doing is, and this is the investment option, the investment opportunity. The private sector, the law is premised on the principle of proximity, so that waste is processed as close as possible to its point of generation.
All right.
So we expect that at the gated community, we have a small waste management facility, so that the waste that leaves that gated community is only 10%.
Okay.
That means visits to the dump site should not be every week. It can be after 3 months, after 6 months, to take the 10%.
Okay.
If we do that for all the estates, then you are sure that our landfills will not get a lot of waste.
Okay.
And we are also discouraging mega companies from coming to Kenya to do waste management.
Okay.
We would like small units to manage the waste, so that if one collapses, we don't have a total collapse of the system. So that we you know, also small units, there will be more recovery than dealing with a big company.
Okay.
Yes.
I mean, I see that. And also give the people
Yes,
a chance
and
to
jobs,
have, you know,
and
creating
jobs,
job
yes,
opportunities and all those things, which is a good thing.
Exactly.
I'm literally told we have like 3 more minutes to go. So I'm just going to give Sonia and Richard to give your final remarks. And I'll allow me, Dr. Ayub and James again to take you know, some of the solutions that you gave as your final remarks. Sonia, for you, in terms of then making sure that everything else that we're talking about is more practical, we create more value, you know, for our waste. What needs to work as soon as now?
So I'll now tie back to the consumer comment that you needed me to answer, and that is really about responsible consumerism. You'd be shocked if you look globally at how the movement towards healthier food has pushed very big, large brand owners to incorporate healthy food in their meals and everything that they provide in fast food and everything else. And in waste management, it's not any different. And I'll give an example. When you go to the supermarket today and you look for scoring powder, you will see one, and I will plug it, it's called Sunlight, right, from Unilever, that is made out of 100% recycled plastic. Now, if a consumer starts to push and saying, I want my products to come in a package that has come from recycled material, and also sharing the social impact that comes with that, so the jobs created, the safe environment created, the impact created in people's lives, then you will see the push of many manufacturers already pushing to make sure that their packaging is made out of recycled material, possibly giving new life to what James had mentioned of the plastic that can be in the environment for 500 years. So what needs to change now is that responsible consumer who can only become responsible if they know. And so, for example, shows like this will show them, okay, there are products on the shelf in Kenya today that are already made out of 100% recycled material, right? Happy to say Mr. Green was part of that. But more so, it is the idea that if the consumer is aware, then that way they will push. And of course, there's already a big push globally for brand owners to start incorporating PCR, post-consumer recycled. So then let the consumers push more, and you will see a complete shift in how even recycling is managed, reuse is managed, and everything else. But my other last parting shot is really that circular economy is not very new to Africa. And remember, in the village, when you have a maize cob, your mom, the grandma would turn it into how to use it to scrub your body, right? So the idea is going back to our roots on how Africans actually think on terms of reuse and recycle, and then let's make sure we give plastic the new life it should have, because we cannot ban plastic.
I mean, listen.
So we need to give it a new life.
Absolutely. I like that. Richard, very quickly.
Thank you. I want to begin by saying that as recyclers, consisting of the private sector, as you said, for us, we are willing. We've been there. We're even more, waiting for the government to come on board and the common mwananchi, the community. But the kind of help we need is, and we want to commend the government very much for what they have done together with the industry, is just having that loud table conversation, like what we have already in the EPR regulations, where now us as recyclers, we can converse in terms of the challenges that we are having when we are handling some materials, as she has said, so that we are also able to continue to grow as an industry. The other issue that I would also want to raise is the need for self-regulation. As an industry, we need to see that our colleagues are not the ones who are dumping that waste on the roadsides. And again, we are not the people who are collecting money and not delivering the right service for money. So that, and also on the government side, we also call on the government also to consider incentives, like taxes, like for instance, VAT when we are doing business. Recyclers will find that taxes are still the same, even when we collect these resources from the dump site. So it is also a consideration that we think that if it was put in place, it could go a long way in helping our businesses to thrive and to create more jobs for people who are otherwise not employed. Lastly, it's about awareness. Right from the person who is in the kitchen to the person who is in office and the person who is driving on the highway. Let us be responsible for the waste that we have. Waste is resource. That whatever you have in your hand as a package is a job for somebody else who is not employed. Kindly put it together and give it away. And if you don't want to give it away, kindly sell and they will give you money. I think that for me is good. Yes.
What works. All right. Okay. So, and I'm happy that we had all of you from different, entities and different areas, and even the government, represented here, so that we see then how best can we deal with this menace. Because again, we do not want to get to 2050 and deal with 3.4 billion tons, of waste, just, all over the place. But thank you very much. I know time is not on our sides. We wish we could continue this over and over again. Something will be happening actually in Mombasa, the National Sustainable Waste Management Sensitization Drive in the coastal region, 29th to 31st. So all the very best with that. But of course, we just have to say thank you, Dr. Ayub Macharia, Director, Environment Awareness, Ministry of Environment, Forestry and Climate Change, as well as Sonia Odwa, who's the country CEO, Mr. Green Africa, as well as Richard Kainika, Secretary General, Kenya Association of Waste Recyclers, and last but not least, James Odongo, who's the Chief Administrative Officer, Kenya Extended Producer Responsibility Organization. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for coming by today. And I'm sure you've picked tidbits here and there of how, you can contribute, to this as far as sustainable waste management is concerned from a household level. So have yourselves a lovely day ahead. I'll see you tomorrow morning, same time, right here on Your World. But until then, stay safe and be responsible. Goodbye for now.